1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Hello, hi, hey there, ho there. This is RHJunior, RHJunior, Reality Check, coming to you live over the internet. That marvelous system of tubes, which provides you with the inner tubes, which create YouTube, imitating the boob tube, for another broadcast of Spleen Squeezins. And my music died. Here we go. My music fall down, go boom. Why for you do this to me? Darn it. Ah, there we go. The 1, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4. Hello, Anthrozil Warrior 3. Welcome aboard. You're asking, howdy Ralph, what's cooking? Nothing at the moment. Nothing at the moment. I've been kind of under the weather yesterday. Just exhausted. I don't know what it is. I just shut down. You know. Just couldn't. You know. I just needed to sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep. And I'm still tired. I don't know how long I'm going to be online. Because I've been here all day. I'm trying to. I didn't do anything today. I just sat here and went, ugh. But yeah, just nothing. We got a grand total of 2 people, you and me. I know I'm all on Twitter. Randomize the music. Randomize the music. There we go. Okay, for all those who are still checking in, yes, I am still doing a GoFundMe. Let's see here, GoFundMe. It's basically just so I don't get thrown off of my out of the trailer park. You see, I have let people know, it basically boils down to, between the IRS, it's been a vicious cycle, basically. I'm constantly paying the IRS, and I'm constantly paying, and I fell behind on both. And I fell behind on my rent. And I fell behind on my rent, and I could not catch up on my taxes, despite paying monthly. And basically, I'm trying to raise $5,000 to pay my, the overdue back rent on my property. I live in a trailer that sits on a trailer park, and the lot rent, you miss them. It's this is accumulated over 10 years. It's not like I've been sitting here for like 5-10 months and not paid any rent, just in case you're wondering. It's just that it was often there were months there was a choice between food, clothing, shelter, and the IRS. Pick any two. So, but I managed to get myself seriously stuck up that infamous creek. And I am currently running a GoFundMe campaign. The link is at the bottom of the image. And thus far, not counting donations that have come in over PayPal, the GoFundMe has raised $2,100. That's about a fifth of the total goal. Even if I only get halfway, that'll solve half the problem, and you know what I'm saying. Of course, it'll leave, thing of it is, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to just pay off everybody all at once, because what it was is that over the past 5 years, due to being self-employed and having to pay my own having to pay the full Social Security, which you do anyway. It's just that you never see the money. They just, your boss just sends them half the money straight to them in his name, while the rest of it comes out of your check. It's a shuck and jive, basically. Look, if you work for somebody, look at your paycheck, look at what they took out for Social Security, multiply it by 2, then add it to your base wage. That's what your landlord, that's what your boss would actually pay you straight up. That's what that's effectively what they're paying for you. And that's what they'd be willing to pay you if it weren't for the IRS coming in and taking a big bite out of it. Now, getting off subject though, is that every year there's several months, over the past 4 or 5 years, I have been hovering at or below poverty level. By all rights, I should not have paid any taxes at all, but because of Social Security tax, I still owed. So every year I would have to make a payment arrangement where I would pay them a little bit each month and try and get it all paid off. And the problem is that it would take about 2 or 3 years to pay off 1 year's taxes, and each year I would still owe taxes for that year. And so, I've been paying, about $50 to $100 a month, which isn't much, but when you're hovering at my level, it's, it's enough to put you in a pinch from time to time. And I have been paying that for the past 4 to 5 years. The IRS has made more money off of me with this nonsense than they would if I had just paid off the taxes, managed to pay off the taxes once. But I'm doing this GoFundMe to try and break the cycle, because every year they come back and say you owe Social Security for last year, and it gets added to the sum, and all that progress gone, most of it anyway. I'm sorry. I've gotten into that. I talk about it too much. Of course, considering the situation, it's going to sort of be on my mind a little bit. But I think it'd probably be better if I waited a little bit. But the good news is that a lot of generous people have donated, made pledges, and made a few commissions, so on and so forth. So there's a little cash coming in, and at the very least, I'll be able to pay a large chunk to my landlord, which won't, at this point, I can already pay about half what I owe my landlord, which is still going to leave me, on a rough spot. But, getting thrown out, not on a getting thrown out rough spot. So, we're making progress here is what I'm saying. And all I can do is just, okay. All right. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about, I was, reading another, I do a lot of reading of fan fictions, in case you have not noticed. But, I was reading a fan fiction, is one of those, it was, well, let's just say in general, in a lot of fiction, it's a very popular trope, in comic books, in superhero fan fiction, in superhero comics, and in a lot of speculative writing. I'm trying to find a way to phrase it. It's the belief that this sort of belief that the trope is that Well, in this particular example, in this one particular comic, you know, the refugees from an alternate universe, an inverse universe, where all the superheroes are supervillains, and they explain that things went crazy because you know, the government and the good guys all finally got together and started cracking down on supervillains, and so the supervillains, you know, rounded up and retaliated, and basically it's been it's made everything worse. And the ongoing trope you see in a lot of writing is that the heroes actually trying to fix things makes things worse. The heroes actually trying to fight the supervillains, you know, or to fight the forces of evil, makes things worse. Or just trying to do the right thing somehow makes everything go wrong. And I thought to myself, why is that trope so popular? Why do people like to believe that you know, the good guys, you know, saddling up and trying to do the right thing would make things worse? And I thought it over, and I had a sort of an epiphany. Now, think about the kind of people that are coming to this conclusion. You know, the nice job breaking it superhero people. The people who believe that really going out and doing the right thing and fighting, you know, for the forces of good would ruin everything. These people generally tend to be, and I'm generalizing it, but I've noticed that they all seem, the people that write this sort of stuff, all seem to have at least at least 1 foot in the liberal camp. They are leftist in moral, ethical, political, economic, you know, outlook. You know, yeah. And now think about it. These people are leftists. You know, they are the self-anointed. You know, they believe that they can do no wrong. You know, that's just a truism about them. Your average leftist believes that he is, you know, the enlightened one. You know, he believes himself to be the light bringer to a benighted, knuckle-dragging conservative society. Now, you're a leftist. You believe that you believe that your environmentalist policies are noble and angelic, you know, ordained by heaven, just about. You believe that your environmental policies are going to save the world and, you know, and just make, you know, paradise on earth, right? And then you go out and surprise, surprise, you're in, you know, the leftist, you know, the eco-activist environmentalist policies, where they get established, they actually do the environment harm. Now, if you think I'm exaggerating, I can give you example, you know, chapter and verse on examples. You know, every time the environmentalists, you know, these environmental activists actually manage to meddle in the ecosystem, they make things worse. And think about it. You have just been out doing what you believe to be the work of God, right? And you look behind you, and things are getting worse behind you. But you are so deluded, you believe that, you know, you believe that you still believe that you are the anointed one. You still believe that your philosophies and beliefs and such are, you know, are the, you know, the golden glowing truth. So what conclusion are you going to come to? You're going to come to the conclusion that anybody who if you actually get any sort of cynicism going, you watch all your glorious golden endeavors collapse into ruin, you're going to come to the cynical conclusion that doing good only causes things to be worse. It's never going to dawn on you that maybe you weren't actually doing good in the first place. It's never going to dawn on you that maybe your plan to save the Earth from the next ice age by covering the South Pole in lamp black, and that's an actual plan they had back when they were all talking about the new ice age. That couldn't possibly have been what made everything go wrong. They come in here and they establish these policies on recycling. So you got people running around up to their elbows in trash, dropping, sorting filthy trash out into three, and it's not actually helping anything. And in fact, the trash problem gets worse. But no, your noble cause, it couldn't possibly be the cause. It must be, just karma. Oh, I know what it is. It's just that no good deed goes unpunished. They almost never question the, look, we've seen it over and over again. How many people, these idiots, they turn, you see these mass migrations from California to other states. Why is that? Because they've turned California, and they've turned, and people fleeing Chicago, for instance, or people fleeing L.A. and they leave, and because it's become an absolute pit. And what do they do when they get to the promised land? When they finally get to Texas or to another more conservative and more prosperous state, they immediately go out and they start trying to introduce their leftist policies there. In their new state, and they will never. They look back at the burning Sodom and Gomorrah behind them and say, "I just don't know what went wrong." All right, I don't know about the I don't know which daring do when you're talking about the 5-score verse. I've heard of it, and I don't quite remember what it is. I apologize. I haven't posted any new chapters lately in any of my fan fictions either. I need to get off my lumpy butt. But like I said, the past couple of nights, last night, I went to bed like 5, and I finally managed to crawl out of bed at 10 in the morning today. I don't know what it is. I just crashed out, and I still feel crashed out. I feel tired. Just no energy. I'd order a bunch of bandage stuff for my legs online today. None of the fancy, just some pads for bandaging my legs, some rubbing alcohol, some hydrogen peroxide, more Gold Bond medicated powder. Just simple as all at almost $90, man. Oh, the 5-score divided by... I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. I remember I got kind of torqued at how it ended for some reason. I don't know what it was. It just bugged the absolute hell out of me for some reason. It was so long ago, I can't even remember what. Just a second. Do you think you could refresh my memory? What was it that annoyed me about that? Something about the ending and the way it ended came completely out of left field, and I was like, that's so flipped me off. Shining armor, and the shining armor, Rarity, and Princess. Oh fudge, memories slipped a groove. But what was it? It was I can't believe a Princess something Miyamore. Princess Miyamore, Princess Cadence, Princess Cadence. Mind like a steel trap, rusted shut and illegal in all 50 states. Princess Cadence. And Princess Cadence and Shining Armor and Rarity had all been turned into humans, had their memories erased, and all ended up dropped in Earth. And then they all changed back, and Princess, Shining Armor and Rarity have been dating, and surprise, here's your wife. And her reaction was, oh, well, there just wasn't really any spark there between us. What? This was your wife? You had a child? You married her? You fought off a flippin' army with the power of true love. What the hell? I just wanted to take that author and just pimp slap them. The hell's wrong with people? It's just a fan fiction. It's just wrong. The author was an idiot. Of course, we live in a society that's so messed up about marriage. Oh my. I love the argument that people have pushed for gay marriage. Oh, well, we've already got divorces. Where are you getting off being a hypocrite? And this is a step in the right direction? Maybe you missed the news bulletin, but nobody thinks that divorce is a wonderful thing. Except divorce lawyers. Divorce is, we made divorce a thing. We made it as easy as signing a couple of papers, and it's been a tragedy. It's been a disaster. It's been a travesty for everybody involved. Millions of men who are ruined by bitter, vindictive women. I'm sorry. When a woman asks for a divorce, it doesn't matter how many years you loved her, how much you sacrificed for her. As far as she can, you're the enemy. And she and her lawyer are out to destroy you. And that's why so many men get dragged over the coals in divorce court. It's because they're still thinking, I loved this woman. What the hell happened? Hello, we got Mr. Cartoon Critic. Hello, hello, hello. We got an Enthrozil Warrior 3. Hello. We've got 3 other people hiding. We know you're there. We can hear you breathing. But, yeah, our society is messed up about marriage. We've turned it into a poison. The laws of our land have turned marriage into a poisonous prospect for any young man, and they've turned it into a casual, disposable hobby for any woman. Millions of men ruined, millions of children's lives destroyed. Oh, it'd be much better if they lived in, it would be much better for them to, live with divorced parents than with two parents that hate each other. No, yeah. You know what would be even better? Is if you stop being a couple of spoiled children, smack the thumbs out of your own mouths, sat down with your spouse, and worked things out like adults. I like the guys who do South Park. They had this one episode where one of them, they come from at least one of them comes from a broken home like that. And he's still very bitter about it. And they had one episode where one of the kid's parents was getting a divorce, and the kid was like, "Mom, don't you love me?" And the mother was going, "Now, son, I just want you to know you're the most important thing in the world. You're the most important thing in the world to me in my whole life, except for my personal fulfillment and satisfaction." I mean, you could almost hear the toucan-haired feminists, What is wrong with people? I know men that have. They lost their wives and they never forgot how they loved her. We got an entire civilization that treats marriage like a fling. And I hate to say it, the burden for that is on the women. Because in our society, we have turned, the laws basically, make every possible easy transition and escape hatch for a woman. But once a divorce happens, it's suddenly even these so-called no-fault divorces. In fact, primarily in these no-fault divorces, the man ends up paying for everything. This is the truth. It's not just my opinion. This is the fact. If you decide to leave an arrangement, you leave everything behind. You don't get to go through it like a salad bar, picking out the things you'd like to keep. If you leave somebody, you leave everything. You leave the house, you leave the car, you leave the money. You leave and you leave the kid. Get out. You want out? Get out. But you give up everything. The good with the bad. That's what they mean by for better or worse. And instead of realizing what a catastrophe that's been, instead of turning back, our society has decided to double down. Let's make marriage even less meaningful. I mean, even the Greeks, and no matter how much these idiots praise the Greeks for their glorious civilization, the Greeks were nasty motherfuckers. There's no other word for it. It's pardon my language, but they were nasty mofos. Let's put it this way. They had a saying. Women for offspring, boys for pleasure, goats for ecstasy. That was a common saying back in ancient Greece. These people were frickin' nasty. And even they did not try to say that two men, or a man and a boy, was a marriage. And why is that so important? Why is it so important? Because A husband and wife, a man and a woman, is literally, whether you were a creationist or an evolutionist, both are agreed on this. The union between a man and a woman as mates, and and to raise their offspring. That is the fundamental building block of humanity. It's the base molecule for the thing we call civilization. It should receive special legal recognition and protection. It predates all governments, all laws, all systems of laws. It predates the church. It predates all religion. It predates all government. It was where humanity as a civilization started. Whether you believe it began at the exit gate of the Garden of Eden, or you believe it began in some open plain out in Africa. And I love these people that say, well, the government should be out of the business of marriage. Well, no. The purpose of government, essentially the purpose of government, the reason we created governments, was to protect the family and to serve the interests of the family. The first government was family. The chieftain was usually the father of the tribe. Hello? A government needs to recognize what constitutes an actual marriage, a union between a man and a woman, in order to protect their rights as a spouse, their rights as a parent. But if anybody can walk through the door, in any grouping and pretend to be married, it's a farce. But I don't see it that way. Well, you're stupid. Of course you can't see it. Of course you can't see it. Well, you can't see anything with your head that stuck that far up your rear end. Go away. Let's. I made this quote on. Here. Here's something for you to think about. Here's something for you to think about. The people. This is one of the counterpoints people make. I've often pointed out. That I've got a book here. It's called "When Science Fails." It points out, several. It points out how often. It's just a counterpoint to how much faith people put in to the idea. Evolution is, the scientific community has approved evolution, therefore it must be true. Consensus. Okay, they do the same thing with global warming and any other political football the scientific community gets a hold of. But I often come back and point out, in the past, I point out all these errors that the scientific community made, and that the people that finally turned things around literally had to climb over the heads of fools, over the heads and shoulders of fools, and struggle their entire lives to get people to accept the truth. Getting them to accept the germ theory, getting them to accept the idea of sanitation and hygiene, getting them to accept, getting them to accept the idea that maybe letting somebody's blood out wasn't exactly healthy. Just things like that. And often, getting people to accept the idea of, Gregor Mendel, What an uphill ride he had, getting people to accept the idea of genetics. And the usual response is the equivalent of, "Isn't scientific progress wonderful?" And they go on, well, we make, that's the way it works. Science makes mistakes, and then we go, we learn from our mistakes, and then we grow and we progress and we get more, and we stand on the shoulders of giants and climb. Well, the problem is, that's not necessarily how the scientific community works. The first assumption being made here is that these people making all this progress are actually going back and correcting mistakes rather than propagating them. As I put it, it doesn't do you any good to stand on the shoulders of giants if the giants had their heads stuck up their rear ends. For hundreds, possibly thousands of years, the medical community relied on anatomy textbooks that thought the corpse of a monkey was the same as that of a man. And anybody that questioned it was a heretic to the truth. And and they made all sorts of quote unquote medical progress based on those incorrect assumptions. The ongoing assumption of every scientist is, one, that they are making that all scientists are prejudiced to assume that the arrow of progress is always pointing the way they're traveling. They've never considered the possibility that they've gone off on a rabbit trail. And anybody that points it out otherwise has got the fight of their lives on their hand. They talk about yes, we've got scientists for 100 years have been working with evolutionary theory. That only means that they've been piling up mistakes. That could just as easily mean that they've been piling up mistakes for the past 100 years. Here's the thing to think about. They once say, they actually study. They say, quite frankly, that evolutionary theory really didn't contribute anything to any of the scientific or medical or technological or biological advances they made in the sciences. Evolutionary theory doesn't contribute anything to actual scientific progress. It's a just so story that scientists tell each other about the past, which they cannot observe. A man trying to develop a new vaccine or to study a germ, evolutionary theory isn't going to, it doesn't matter one way or the other for him. And in fact, it's liable to lead him off on a wild goose chase on a rabbit trail. Here's something for you to all think about. I'm obviously no scientist, but my God, I studied science just like everybody else did in school, and I noted one thing. They went into incredible detail on how viruses worked. Essentially, a virus basically clings to a cell, uses its DNA as a key to unlock that cell, and then sticks its DNA in there and turns it into a factory for producing more viruses. And more virulent diseases are just ones that have changed the combination on their key, so to speak. Oh yeah, science progresses, but the problem is often it regresses too. one of the ongoing things for the past, again, for the past 100 to 200 years, you can you can look into the newspapers, look up, science, or public interest stories about science and about the weather, and you will see it goes through a cycle. All the learned scholars are predicting a rapidly incoming ice age, or and 20 years later, every 20 years or so, they change their prediction. It's going to be an ice age. It's going to be, it's going to be an ice age. It's going to be a blazing inferno. It's going to be an ice age. It's going to be a blazing inferno. It's going to be an ice, over and over and over and over. And that's just in the lifetime of the public newspaper. Look, I'm old enough to remember. I am old enough to remember when scientists were coming out swearing up and down that the 70s and the 80s were going to be this terrible ice age. Whoops. And now I've looked at the predictions they made for this decade. The global warming fanatics, dead wrong. The temperatures they predicted for now are wrong. These environmental alarmists have never been right. Literally never been right. They keep making predictions every 10 to 20 years. What the next 10 to 20 years is going to be like, and every year they're wrong. But they still get press. They still get money. They still get scientific accolades. Why? Because people have the memory of a goldfish. The same nonsense over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I'd love to get a cross-section of these people that are in the flat earth movement. I can't believe this, a flat earth movement in this day and age. Or in any day and age. And these people aren't aborigines from the heart of Borneo or anything. How badly has education failed that people are incapable of figuring out how we know the earth is round? Look, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Greeks did not have airships or spaceships where they could fly up and see how the Earth was round. They didn't have, they didn't have somebody that drove or flew or swam in a straight line and then came back around the other side. They didn't have that. They didn't have any of that. We have. We have the record of people who circumnavigated the globe. We have photographs. We have all this, but even the Greeks were able to figure out, hey, the Earth's a sphere. And not only that, they were able to calculate they were able to calculate within a few hundred miles its actual diameter. And that's the thing about Christopher Columbus. He was working with the wrong information. He thought the Earth was smaller. The argument during Columbus's age was not whether or not the Earth was round, but how big it was. And Columbus was wrong. He thought the Earth was about half the size it actually is. That's why he thought he could make it to India sailing west. He grossly undercalculated how far he'd have to boat, how far he'd have to sail. If it hadn't been for the continents and the islands in the if it hadn't been for the continents in the way, he would have his entire expedition would have been lost, because they did not have enough supplies to sail across both the Atlantic and the Pacific. And the rest is history. I talked about this the other night. So many things that, most of so-called scientific progress consists of scientists going back and apologizing to their ancestors for all the things that they themselves got wrong. Science, invariably, inescapably, is done by human beings, and human beings are perverse critters. Selfish, contrary. And the more they talk about how they are devoted to science and logic and facts, the more irrational, the more carefully you have to hide all the sharp implements in the room. Because the more they claim, the more somebody claims to be, promoted, moved only by logic and reason and fact. Back up, because El Snapola. They're about to open a can of crazy. I ran about the same things a lot. It's the same things that bug me. That's the thing. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh all the time, but I thought he was great. I still think he's a great. I think he's a great spokesperson for the conservative movement. I think he is, an excellent radio personality. But all the stuff he talks about is the same. It's all week after week after week. It's the same stuff. Because Democrats never change. It's always the same crap from the Democrats. So, what's he going to talk about? And talking about new topics is advisable. World of Warcraft. They've downloaded the World of Warcraft. They've downloaded the pre-update package. Basically, plug it in the last little bits before they drop Battle for Azeroth on the gaming world. It's sort of a sneak preview of some of the games, of the new game stuff. They've got a couple of new races that playable races in the character selection, and it boils down to oh yay. A couple of new variations of elf and a couple of new variations of orc. I'm like, ooh, I spent a lot of this. I spent a lot of this looking forward to. They had introduced. There's going to be some new races in Azeroth, and they're all non-playable races. Most, if not all of them. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. Well, uh, in case anybody's wondering, yes, I'm running a GoFundMe, and yeah, basically, I've gotten financially backed into a corner. Uh, Between the IRS and the landlord, uh, I'm up a creek because the landlord wants almost $5,000, or I lose my lease and I lose my home. And this is a cumulative result of about 10 years, 5 to 10 years. The tax thing is 5 years, because I currently had an arrangement with the landlord that I would pay them $100 extra every month to try and catch up my rent, and I've not been able to maintain that. Between my regular expenses and everything else that come up, and the taxes that I have to pay monthly to the IRS, basically, I've only managed to hold ground with the IRS, and I've lost ground with the landlord. So I'm trying to raise enough money to pay them both off and put everything back to zero, and break this this vicious cycle I'm stuck in. Basically, what it is every year, after a year of paying back taxes, I wasn't able to pay my current taxes, and I have to put those taxes on there. And really, the only reason I owe back taxes is because of Social Security, because I'm self-employed. If it weren't for Social Security, I would be paying no taxes at all. But Social Security, self-employed, I ended up owing more money every single year, even though I was below poverty level for a couple of those years, and barely above it several others. So I've been, basically, I've been trying to make a size 2 sock fit over a size 10 foot for the past 10 years. And so I've had to set out the hat, and I'm begging for help. I've set up a GoFundMe. It's right there at the link at the bottom of the screen, www.gofundme.com. It's Save Ralph's Home. Not happy about having to do it, but I really, just flat out of options. So, if you can throw a little bit in the hat, I'd be grateful. And if you could pass it on, pass the word on. This guy's about to, this guy's up a creek. He's out on, up a tree and out on a limb. Throw a little love his way. I'd appreciate that too. But anyway, could always go work for PBS. Your donations keep me on the air. But basically, yeah. Now, those last two pencil drawings, the rabbit with the bumblebee and this current one, the dancing cat girl, those are seriously old. They're like, oh, they got to be at least 20 years old. Back when I was first starting to get interested in the furry fandom, first heard about the anthropomorphic fandom, and I went online and I was like, holy cow. Let me tell you something, man. It is strange. Oh dear. I have got to run to the little artist's room. I'm sorry. Gut rumbles. I will be back in a little bit, but for now, enjoy the music. And I'm back again. You, me, and my lactose intolerance. There we go. Dude. Oh, if I didn't have to resort to drawing it. I bet you're not a fan of it. Furry cheesecake. I bet you're not a fan of it any more than I am, and you wish you didn't have to resort to drawing it. Allow me to inform you that I had a crush on Gadget Hack Wrench, okay? Ugh. All right. And you're sitting there, the horror. Yeah, I like it a cheesecake. I'm a male like any other. But let's face it. Okay, let's talk about that. It's the furry fandom. I was introduced to the furry fandom in the very late 1990s online. And let me put it this way: there's this one guy. He's a cartoonist, and he used to work for Walt Disney. Disney World. He worked for Disney. He was one of the animators. He was one of the artists. He was also a big fan, and he and his friends did a weekly show called the Fun Day Puppet Show. This show ran for something like 20 years. Okay, online every Sunday. 4 hours from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock, live. Them just goofing around with a bunch of Folk Manus puppets and whatever props they could get to, just ad-libbing stuff. And, well, anyway, one of these guys, the leader of the troupe was, his handle was Mutt. His dog, his puppet was a sheepdog puppet from Folk Manus. Folk Manus puppets, look them up. Folkmanis. Very high quality puppets. Not exactly made for full adult-sized hands, though. Most of them, they're more for looks than for actual use these days. But anyway, he said one day he was looking online. He looked up, he was trying to look up some information for something or other. And he typed out anthropomorphics. He had just learned that word meant, funny animals. And he typed it up, and he started finding websites and web rings, and he said he was up all night looking at this stuff, going through it, finding all these fans and all these groups and all these people. He said he called in sick the next day and spent the rest of the next day online. And he said when you're a fan of something unusual, you think you're the only one in the world. He said, I've never heard a better description. He said I was like Tarzan seeing other human beings for the very first time. And that's how you feel, because you're like, you come in here and you find these people, and you say, oh yeah, I was really big. I really loved Disney's Robin Hood. It's like, oh, you do, and then you find out there's an entire forum of people that were fanatics about and then you find out more of it, and you're like, okay, I'm sure this is the reaction with any fandom. I don't care what fandom you're talking about. I'm talking whether you're talking about sci-fi in general, or just Star Trek, Star Wars, or maybe you're a big fan of Sherlock Holmes or BBC British television, or whatever you care to name. Your first reaction is always, oh my gosh, these people are like me. And then you get to know some of the freakier ones. The ones way out there on the edge, and you go, oh my gosh, am I like these people? Thelma in the crossover with Nip and Tuck. I don't know what you were referring to, Ben. You sort of came out of left field with that one. I think you missed a line. I did a crossover between Goblin Hollow and Nip and Tuck. Is that the one you're referring to? I'm not sure. I may not have drawn her in it anywhere. May have forgotten to. It was sort of a short crossover. I was sort of trying to wrap up Goblin Hollow once and for all there. Anyway. Oh yeah, the Fun Day Puppet Show. I did a series of strips where the Fun Day Puppet Show troupe shows up in Nip and Tuck, and one of the puppeteers actually bought the original art on auction. But as years went by, I sort of had a estrangement. It was sort of falling out with them. They were getting their puppet show. It was not for kids, and they were getting seriously raunchy. And I said, okay, I don't think I want anything more to do with this. And I think I don't want my stuff associated with this. I pulled the crossover out of the archives. I'm not sure what I did with it. I think I have it saved somewhere as an aside. I don't know. Yeah. Well, actually, Thelma got her Daisy Dukes elsewhere. It's just, you basically can consider the crossover with the Fun Day Puppet Show as non-canonical. Anyway, that's the thing of it, that's the thing of it when you get involved with people in a fandom or in a club or a group. You find yourself suddenly shaking hands with people you really don't want to be. That's why I drifted away from the mainstream, from the furry fandoms and the furry fan clubs and such. And I was like, because it's just just no interest in upholding certain standards. Yeah, they just weren't interested, and I wasn't interested in being involved with them. And they were getting some real characters taking, just basically taking over and running the shooting match. Such is life. Like I said, when you first get there, when you first get into a fandom, you're like, these people are like me. And then later on, you're like, am I like these people? and eventually, if it's bad enough, you drift away from it. Called growing up, I suppose. Fandoms are a social phenomenon that attracts. It's sort of a general phenomenon that tends to attract poorly adjusted people. Doesn't matter what the fandom's about. What matters is that they're a insular club that people with lots of issues can hide away in. And convince themselves that, hey, I belong now. People need to belong to something. They need to feel like a part of something. And sometimes that's to their detriment. Wow. I love how everybody talks about how furry fans are freaks. Oh, you like looking at the furry cheesecake? You're freaks. You're perverts. You're weirdos. Shut up. We've seen your fandom. Thank you. Okay. In a word, lolicon. I've learned thanks to the anime fandom. I have learned more Japanese words that I never wanted to know the definitions of in one place in my entire life. Lolicon, ecchi, hentai, girl, yoi, yuri. Everybody freaking, some guy likes pictures of cute girls with bunny ears, and everybody's, oh, you freak, you pervert, and meanwhile they've got an entire stash of Japanese porn that would make Cthulhu gag. And just go away, just yeah. I won't apologize for making the girl characters on my comic strips sexy looking. I'll tell you that. That's how it is. Do I have any rationalization or justification for it? Do I? I won't apologize for that any more than a Star Trek fan will apologize for having a thing for green chicks. Now, I had another topic I wanted to talk about, and I was just thinking of it, and then I was thinking of it, and then I forgot it, and I shouldn't let my mind wander. It's too little to be out on its own. I love these notifications I get from Facebook. There's a bunch of updates from your friends. It's great. I'm being guilt tripped about Facebook now. Goodness. I love this new some email here. Was Jesus a socialist? No. Next question. What can you do with people like that? Just what the heck? Oh my. Now, for those of you, if you've been reading the fanfics I write, the Warcrafter, which is a crossover between World of Warcraft and an online serial superhero novel called Worm. In the original story the original story Worm is about this girl. It's set in a superhero world where people who gain their powers are triggered. They gain their powers when they experience essentially what essentially becomes the worst day of their life. An intense, incredible trauma. The protagonist is a girl named Taylor Hebert, who 2 years ago had lost her mother in an accident. I'm turning this down here. This music here, it's bugging me. It's hard to talk when I got that blowing in my ear. Ow! Now Taylor Hebert, she basically has the crappiest year you could possibly imagine. Her mother dies. She gets her mother dies. She comes home from camp after summer and finds out that her best friend has turned on her. Her best friend dumps her and starts bullying her. She goes to school. She goes to high school, and basically, her former best friend and two other girls engage in this absolutely vicious campaign of sadistic bullying. And just basically wreck her life. And nobody will do anything about it. No matter what she does, she talks to the teachers, she talks to the principal, and nobody will believe her. And nobody will stand up for her, and she just starts breaking down, and she goes from being this vivacious, energetic girl to this slouching, pasty-faced ghost in the halls. And it finally culminates with the girls that are picking on her. She goes off on Christmas break. She comes back. The bullies stuffed her locker full of used feminine hygiene products and other garbage, and when she opens it up, they shove her into it and lock her inside and leave her there. And it isn't until hours later, almost the entire day, before somebody finally finds her and lets her out. And she ends up having to go to the hospital because she literally just completely breaks down. And also because she injured herself trying to get out, and she got infections from the filth, and it's just basically just a shining little day in hell. And because of that, she goes through such a terrible trauma, she gains superpowers. She gains the power to control insects. And the original story basically follows her through her rather tragedy and trauma-filled life. And the sad thing to say is that the guy, it's so grimdark. The author shits bats. Okay. Because no matter what she does, everything just keeps getting worse. She decides to become a superhero, so she goes out on her first night, and she runs into Lung, who's basically one of the most dangerous villains in the city. He's basically the Incredible Hulk, except he turns into a giant dragon, covered in flames. And the longer he fights, the bigger and angrier and crazier and stronger he gets. And she ends up tangling with him by just by pure luck. She survives. She wins. Then one of the local established superheroes comes along and cons her into giving up, letting him take the credit for beating Lung and taking him in. You really don't want his gang to know that you're the one that took him down, kind of thing. Then she finds out, she jumped him, but she jumped Lung because she heard him telling his gang, find these kids and kill them. And he's like, oh my gosh, he's going to kill a bunch of kids, and so she challenges him, and then she finds out the kids in question are a bunch of teenage supervillains who had just robbed him. And and they think she's a villain too, because she's wearing this bug-themed outfit which looks sort of scary and villainous, and they invite her to join them. And she convinces herself she's going undercover, and that she's going to, but she ends up going native instead. And and every step of her life is basically downhill. And it just gets worse and worse. And every time she tries to fix things, every time she has what should have been a heroic moment, it turns out to be something making everything worse. Godzilla threshold stuff keeps getting crossed. Basically, it ends up with her saving the entire world from the apocalypse at basically the cost of her own sanity, and getting shot in the head as a thank you note. Just all sorts of rays of sunshine, right? But she's the character. Everybody, all the fans, they love her. They absolutely love Taylor. Poor Taylor, Taylor the Whoopee. She's they're all, and the thing of it is, at the same time, there's another character in the story. He's a very minor character, but his name is Greg Vetter, and he is he's at the same outcast table as she is. He's you'd call him borderline Asperger's, and he's got no chill. He's an absolute geek loser. He doesn't know how to talk to anybody. He doesn't, he's utterly clueless. And you don't see any scenes where he's actually bullied, but you figure he's getting stuffed in dumpsters all week long. and basically, he's as pathetic and pitiful as Taylor is, and her reaction to him is, ew. Because she regards him as, she says she made the mistake of being nice and polite to him, and now he won't leave her alone. And her basic reaction is ew, and wishing he'd go away. And the fans absolutely hate him. I mean, they write their own fan fictions, and basically, he's their version of Ron the Death Eater. You know what I'm saying? He's always the worst, most disgusting kind of loser. And they just, I hope he gets killed by an Endbringer, kind of stuff. And I made this point. I point this out. And for a miracle, a couple of other readers agree with me. They said, wait a minute, come on. If you were walking down the hall that schoolway, the hallway of that school, if you were walking down the hallway of that school, and you saw poor, slouchy, pimple-faced Greg Vader over in the corner with his Star Trek comics under his arm, and you looked across the hallway and you saw Taylor Hebert, staring at the floor with her hands in her pockets and her hoodie over her head, slouching and shuffling her way down the hallway and avoiding everyone. You'd look at both of them and say, two peas in a pod. And you probably look at Taylor the same way you looked at Greg Vedder and think, if they're getting bullied, they probably deserve it. It's very easy to be, it's very easy to have sympathy for a character when you know their backstory. It's not so easy to put yourself in somebody else's shoes when all you know is a little bit of description, and you've only seen them off to the side, But it depresses me how few of these fans, they have all the, oh, poor Taylor, and all that horrible bullying she went through, and a horrible, and she's, and everybody wants to give her a hug and a cookie. On the other hand, if you're standing outside the story and looking in, this is this antisocial girl who goes off, becomes a supervillain, takes over a part of her own town, and spends all her time moping about poor little her. Yeah, if you were a typical member of that school, 1,000 kids in one school, and her story is something you heard about weeks later over cafeteria lunch, you wouldn't have cared. You're given no chance to sympathize with Greg. You're given every chance to empathize with Taylor, none to sympathize with Greg Vedder. You know almost nothing about him except he's a hopeless nerd, and he trolls people online when he's at home. He plays tons of video games and trolls people online. But he's sort of like what they did with Ron Weasley in Harry Potter. Is you look it up. It's in TV tropes called Ron the Death Eater. Is the trope is basically where they take a minor character, with a few minor flaws, basically turn them into Satan incarnate. And you look around Ron, and what is the reason? Because Hermione criticized him. Everybody thinks he's crap. Hermione complains about Ron's eating habit. So every story has Ron being this horking pig at the table. Hermione complains that Ron doesn't study enough. This is the crazy girl who used a time machine to take more homework and classes. But she's complaining that he doesn't study enough. So he's a lazy slob, who's almost flunking out of school in every fan fiction. Coincidentally, he wasn't. He's in the books, he was pulling at least a B average, or the equivalent thereof, and he got into several Newt level classes with Harry and Hermione. He gets embarrassed and frustrated when it's brought up how poor he is. So obviously he's a paranoid, jealous creep. He has an argument with his best friend in the fourth year, so he's a traitor, and on and on and on and on. If Ron does anything wrong, everything Ron does is wrong. I'm like, you bunch of easily manipulated Muppets. Half the problem is that the movies, the director for all the movies after the second one was a Hermione Granger fangirl. He was a fanboy rather, and the director literally took all of Ron's best scenes and lines and gave them to Hermione instead, and made him and turned him into the cowardly comic relief. And it does not pay to be the sidekick, let me tell you. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying is, Greg Vader. This is why in the Warcrafter, I haven't really gotten into his character much. I haven't had much time with his character, but I made it clear he's aware of what he is, and he wants to be better. That's why he chose to become a paladin. Because he wants to set the bar as high as he can. And in the story, he's ashamed of himself because he in the end he realizes after Taylor gets run off to the house, he realized he never stuck up for her. He was going around saying how he liked her, but he never stuck up for her. He never, and then he tries to stick up for her after the fact and gets beaten up for his troubles. And, he realizes that he's that's the thing about most people. Let me put it this way: guys like that are more self-aware than people want to realize. Losers know they're losers. The real sad ones, they know that they're losers, and they know that they've failed to live up to any worthwhile expectation, and they want to be better. They want to be better. But it's like somebody handed them their life, in a container with no handles, and they can't get a grip on it. And no matter what they try, they're always fumbling. And it's heartbreaking. If we had us, and frankly, this, if we had just if people just had a touch more empathy, they'd realize, guys like, it's not the beautiful, sympathetic, deeply thought out character protagonist that we have the most in common. What we have, most of us, we'd be the guy in the back row, the extra, standing there and losing his mind, while the world goes insane. At the best, we'd be the sidekick that everybody laughs at, and more than likely, I'm sorry. You look. Look, here's an example for you. The Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory, and all the knockoffs that have come up lately for it. In real life, these characters would not be charming, funny, and charismatic. They'd be those weirdos who live across the hall. That annoying jerk that keeps taking my parking space. That vaguely creepy uh, Indian guy with the obsession with the robots. Just the reason people hate Greg Vedder is because we realize we wouldn't be Taylor Hebert at the end of the story. We'd be Greg Vedder. And like I said, that's why I laid claim to Greg Vedder and had him become a member of the Warcrafters, a member of their team. I'll be honest, because I empathize with the guy. I'll be blunt. I have been a social outcast for a very good portion of my life. I was the school, the class loser, the class nerd. I just could not relate well with others. I couldn't. I was terrible at it. I was, it got to the point, we moved a lot when I was young, from time to, and it got to the point where I looked forward to us moving to a new place, because that could mean I could, leave everything that went wrong behind and start over again. Because I always seemed to become the most hated kid in class. I wasn't a bully. I didn't pick on people. I didn't hurt people. I didn't, I was just, a weirdo. One of the most influential moments in my life. Uh, I was like in fourth or fifth grade, and my parents told me we would be moving that summer. And it was the end of the school year, and the teachers decided I should let the rest of the class know. I stood up in the class. I got something I got to tell everybody. This summer, my family and I are going to be moving away. And the entire class applauded. I mean, full on applauded and cheering. Of course, the teacher and her assistant teacher, stop that. That was so cruel. That was so mean. But damage done. A little too late. Too late. And I haven't been able to forget that day ever since. It became a given part of my life that no matter where I went, no matter where I lived, I was going to be the kid that everybody hated. I just learned to accept that. Maybe I could have learned to get along better with everybody. Maybe not. Became very bitter and cynical, as you can guess. It seemed obvious to me that the way it worked is you moved into a new area, and every time you made a mistake or did something wrong, they had a little chalkboard and they put a little notch up, and nothing you ever did would take one of those notches down, and they just keep adding. And after you got a certain number of points, they hated your guts. They thought you were a jerk and a loser and a weirdo. I'm 47 years old. I'm a 47-year-old man. And it's taken years of my adult life to stop believing that. And deep down, I came to deep down, I'm still afraid of that. I figure that the people around me are just tolerating me. I've lived with the assumption that everybody around me is just tolerating me, and that once the cup is full, they're finally going to be rid of me and start shunning me. And whether or not it ever happens, I sit there expecting it to happen. I come to the conclusion that I sit down in a room full of adults that I've worked with for a couple of years, or that I've socialized with for a couple of years, and I'm sitting there and I'm wondering, you know, just how sick are these people of me? Talking about where I'm talking a little bit about my own life. A little bit of you dies inside when you're the unliked one. It's a little painful. It never goes away. Not not fully, not really. And it affects you your whole life. Mm. A little winded. Running out of juice. It's only it's just under an hour. Now you'll note this picture of the cat cow girl, ibis, whatever she was. The guy that commissioned it, Wild Wild Weasel, he comes back to me. He says, "Could you make her look more feminine? I don't know, make her boobs, a little larger or something. Make them stick out more or something." That officially made it the first time anybody ever commissioned me and said, "Can you make her breasts larger?" Like, yeah. Just an ironic note there is nobody ever asked. It's not like I'm drawing them out there with beach balls on their chest, just shriek them for crying out loud. But I didn't what? I have no idea what spurg means. And I'm afraid to ask right now. Look, back when I was a kid, I don't think they had, I've never heard of them calling anything like that Asperger's. So I wouldn't know even if I did. I don't think I was Asperger's. I was just weird. I just wasn't in tune with whatever it is that makes, people tick together. I don't know. Could blame it on all sorts of things. Just a little weirdo. I don't know. I guess they were just operating on a different wavelength than I was. And the longer I tried to go with it, the more sick of me they got. The lawnmower guys haven't shown up yet. Starting to get anxious. They haven't deducted their payment yet. That's the thing of it. So, nothing's gotten started. Landlord's going to be upset if I don't get him done. No, I didn't. Yeah, I thought it was funny. I didn't mind. It's just one of those running gags you always expect to happen to you and it never does. And when it finally does, oh, there we go. This is kind of aggravating. The way the volume control on this music. I'm like, come on, guys, keep it consistent. Dum de dum de dum de dum de dum de da 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 dum de dum de de dum dum diddly diddly diddy dum de dum de dum de dum. Getting a little throat's a little sore. Oh, running in there. Is how is the music? Is the music too loud, too soft, just about right? I feel kind of gassy actually. I just. I don't want to spend my time. I'm getting a little distracted here. A little sleepy and a little this and all that. And I don't want to spend my time moping about my childhood. can't hear the music, Ben? How's that? About like that. Oh my. Questions to ask, things to think, things to say, things worth saying. Just don't know. I tried to get as much sleep as I could last night, and apparently just not. Waking up feeling like somebody beat on the small of your back doesn't help, you know. Okay, it has been 2 hours. I'm just really running out of things to say. I'm tired, very sleepy. I'm feeling under the weather. I've been feeling under the weather the past day or so. And I'm just out of things to say at the moment. Really, what I want is to curl up in bed and stay there for at least a day. Till I stop feeling like I'm exhausted when I get up. Can't have everything though. For everything else, there's caffeine. Okay, I'm thinking, okay, it's 2 o'clock, it's 11 at night, and I am just plumb out of fuel. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a night for tonight. I'll try and pick up tomorrow night. Maybe have a little bit more to talk about. Maybe do some more drawing. Doing some more discussions. Maybe try and have a topic or two that's, I don't know, current. And not, it's like, we talk about all these things we talk about. It's like talking about the weather. Everybody talks about it, nobody does anything about it. Ha. Okay. I'll catch you all tomorrow. You all have yourselves a good night. Take care of each other.